Hi, Shulamit. How are you today?
Hi, Stephanie. I'm having a good day. How
Wonderful.
about you?
I'm having a very good day. Thank you.
Yeah,
So, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
sure. My work is I'm the entrepreneur's therapist. And so I work with women who are self employed, who are entrepreneurs, who are business owners, who are tired of feeling like they're going to lose their crap on the daily because this is an era of relentless stressors, right? Like worse even than it was a couple of years ago. And so, if they want a plan for their mental and emotional well being, or they want to care for their mental and emotional well being, then I help them support themselves in that way because what we bring to our business, our mental and emotional well being, has an impact on our business, and our business has an impact back on our life and our mental and emotional well being. So, it's an important holistic support for sustainable business foundations. And that's why I offer the service.
So, what made you decide to pursue your business?
Well, thank you for asking. So, there's a story behind how I became the entrepreneur's therapist. Um, the very short story is that I was injured in my mid 30s, and I had been working in personal growth and mental wellness as a side hustle all my life. And when I became injured, it made sense to go back to my roots, which was social work. I had started university in social work in my early 20s, but had left that for some other things. So I set the goal of graduating from my master's program before I was 50, and I did it. Woo-hoo. But as we all know who are self-employed, we are great. We are masters of our craft, but not necessarily masters of business. And so I knew two things. I knew that most small businesses fail within the first year or the first 5 years. And because I was entering a new career from zero at 49, and I'm a woman, I knew what the prospects for employment were very poor. And so I wanted to set up my own business so that I could be my own employer. But also because of the nature of the workforce when I came in the 80s, it was all employment. It was all contract work. Like people think the gig economy is now. Girls and boys, I'm here to tell you, and folks, that the gig economy started in the 80s because there were no jobs. It was only contracts. So therefore, no savings, no pension, no none of this. Um, and so this work needed to be work that I could do basically until the day I died. So that was the one thing, was around my employment prospects, and I knew that I had to ensure that I had a viable business. But I also knew that the psychological research around financial well-being shows that mental health professionals score lowest on all measures of financial wellness. And that was not going to be my story either. So when I graduated from my master's program and began my private practice, I also at the same time started business training. I started hanging out with entrepreneurs. I started networking at the chamber, and I was the only therapist hanging around in those areas. And I established a holistic stress and trauma clinic. So I had a brick and mortar business. And in the process of establishing that and working with associates and hanging out with other entrepreneurs, because I was the only therapist, I think people were like more likely to tell me, other entrepreneurs were more likely to share with me kind of what their struggles were. And as a result of hearing from the other folks I was networking with who were building businesses and my own experience of building a business, I realized, first of all, I lived firsthand the impact of entrepreneurship on mental health, but I also heard about it from other folks. And it really became clear that there was a need for a mental health professional who understood how these two aspects come together and have an impact on one another.
Mhm.
And that's how the entrepreneur's therapist was born.
Mm. What has kept you feeling driven and motivated during the harder parts of your entrepreneurship?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the nature of the work that I do.
Mhm.
And my own history is that I'm a trauma survivor, and I've worked initially in my business with many trauma survivors. And trauma continues, to be a feature even though I'm not focused on trauma work, trauma shows up for many folks, especially many women, and especially many women who become entrepreneurs, because it's our trauma adaptation, right? So many of us, I know for me, nobody is going to screw me over again. I am going to be the boss of myself. I am running my own show, right? Which is the opposite of the overpowering and disempowering experience that you have in trauma. So sometimes the world can seem like really dark. And what's in my heart, I'm getting a little bit choked up. I'm just going to pause for a moment. What's in my heart is to shine some love, some loving presence into this world that can seem so dark. And so, that's kind of like the deepest motivator for the work I do. And the more kind of surface motivator is my kitty cat is just going to jump on my lap, so I'm going to make room for her. The more surface motivator, when stuff gets difficult in business, because I'm 58 now, I can look back and see all the difficulties that I've experienced. And I can tell myself the story that even though things did not necessarily work out the way I wanted them to, that they were not always all good situations or good outcomes. They weren't always what I desired, but I was ultimately okay. So when I look back and see this, I can remind myself that ultimately I can be okay. I have what it takes to be okay. And so when I'm struggling, I even kind of do this. I kind of look back, why it's over my left shoulder. But anyway, I look back and I say to myself, ultimately everything works out okay for me and I can be okay. And that helps me kind of calm and soothe the anxious or distressed or hopeless or overwhelmed parts of me. And it might mean that in that moment, what I might need to do is take a little time out, go for a walk, pet my kitty, hug my beloved, and then come back. But it helps to be able to tell myself that story that ultimately I have been okay and ultimately I will be okay, right? That just helps me keep going.
What's a piece of advice you could offer others who would like to follow in your path?
Who would like to start a business or would like to become a therapist in private practice?
Both, I would say.
Well, if you want to become a therapist in private practice, first of all, you got to business all the way. Find a reliable, reputable coach and community and get business training and learn how to run your business. In particular, learn how to do your money and learn how to do your marketing. Because most therapists in private practice don't. They just open their door and hang their shingle and hope for the best. It's a business, and you have to learn how to run it like a business. Get your marketing and your money. Get a handle on those things. And that's, I guess, true for any entrepreneur, but particularly for therapists in private practice. But for non-therapists in private practice, and I would say get a supervisor. Always, 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 therapist, have your own therapist.
Yes.
Because it's hard work, right? But for entrepreneurs, people who are wanting to start their own business, to become self-employed or, brick and mortar, freelance, that kind of thing, I would say find community and business support, because, and this applies too for a therapist in private practice, but I think the other two are more of a priority first. And then after this, find your community and support, because of the 7 factors of threat to your mental health as an entrepreneur that I write about and am familiar with, the one I hear from folks the most about is isolation. And we know from the mental health and health research that isolation is a social determinant of health. It has a very significant impact on your mental and physical well-being. I think it's as much as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, right? So as a business owner, to find a community where other people go, oh, me too, right? Or when you hear them talking, you can go, oh my goodness, I thought it was just me and there's nothing wrong with me. to have the community of support and to have the community of knowledge on whom you can rely, because there's so much we don't know about running a business,
Mhm.
I would say make that a priority.
Okay. And is that, or, what made you sign up for the Canadian Women's Chamber of Commerce? Was that part of it?
No, that was more an activism thing. Although I must admit, having become familiar with what CanWCC offers,
Mhm.
the networking events, especially lately, where Jenna has come and been a facilitator, has been so connecting and so validating and so nourishing and so wonderful that yes, that is a very powerful aspect of what I get from the Canadian Women's Chamber of Commerce. But what motivated me to join was, as a feminist and an activist, some kind of feminist. Like I realize the term feminist is problematic. So feminist in its widest and most inclusive sense.
Mhm.
I wanted to see women represented at the policy table. I wanted to see women. I wanted to support advocacy, economic advocacy for women entrepreneurs. We really saw during the pandemic how solopreneurs were very did not appear in the help that was offered, and we know that many solopreneurs are women, right? And so I wanted to add my voice to the voice of other women entrepreneurs. And my local chamber of commerce is great, and it has a particular spin because it's diverse and represents the needs of the general population in the location where it is,
Mhm.
right? Just like there's a Black chamber of commerce, and Black folks need a chamber of commerce that represents their special interests. Same also, women, I believe, need our own chamber, and that's what motivated me to join.
Wonderful. And can I ask you, how would you like to see your business grow?
This is a question I've been asking myself because I did have associates. I did have a lot of demand that overwhelmed my capacity to provide service, and that's why I established the Holistic Stress and Trauma Center in Kemptville, Ontario. And that's one of the ways we conceive of growth in business, right? Is it's no longer just you providing service; you run the business and hire others to provide the service, and then but that becomes its whole thing. It becomes a very it's a big machine or a big ship to steer. It takes a lot of work.
Hmm.
And the bigger it gets, the more it requires in capacity from you as the business owner. Uh, and I discovered that kind of growth, even though it meant possibly lots of money, was not for my mental health the kind of growth that really, it wasn't serving my mental health. And as a mental health practitioner, I believe I have an ethical obligation to practice what I preach,
Mhm.
right? And so I'm clear that is not growth for me. And so having closed that practice in 2019 and reestablishing my own solo practice and my own client base has been the focus of the past couple years. And now that's what I'm asking myself is, what does growth look like for me? I think revenue wise, it's going to be speaking and teaching. And possibly I'm working on a book. I did research last year and the year before, interviewing women entrepreneurs about their take on mental health, what it means to them, and how they care for their mental health, which is a
Mhm.
really different take from what we see in the medicalized view on mental health and mental wellness. So I think growth is going to be in my capacity, but not in my capacity to work one-on-one. It's going to be in my capacity, I think, to have more of an impact and to advance the discourse around mental health and entrepreneurship, so that not only to fight the stigma, but also to empower entrepreneurs so that they can be more well and have more sustainable businesses on a greater scale than simply one-to-one. I think
Mhm.
that's where it's going now.
Okay, so what would success look like for you?
Well, I would love to have my mental health virtual retreat days sold out. I would like to have that virtual retreat leads into a women entrepreneurs peer support group, which I would like to see full, to have a really robust and rich community in that program, and to be speaking and teaching. Right now, my goal is to have about a quarter of my annual revenue come from speaking and teaching. That's my goal for this year.
Mm-hmm.
And so success this year would mean accomplishing that.
Beautiful. So, can I ask you, in a fairy tale world, uh, what do you feel the next 5 years should look like for women and non-binary business owners?
Well, if I could wave a magic wand,
Mm-hmm.
I would see a minimum basic income for everyone across the board, all people,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that empowers people to do the work they are called to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think having to work in order to pay the bills is a harmful connection between vocation and survival. I think survival impairs our ability to be creative and to solve problems and to come up and to be innovative, to come up with innovative answers to the dilemmas of the world. So if we all could exhale and pay our bills, then we would be free, truly free, to come up with some really interesting ways of caring for one another, being in community, finding sustainable housing, sustainable food, sustainable transportation, sustainable ways of doing business, sustainable ways of caring for one another's mental health. I think that would drop so many barriers to access for folks to so many of the well-being tools that now are at a level above which certain people can't access them.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's like what we would call democratization. To me, that's true democratization, is removing the barriers across the board so that we can all be well, that we can all be happy, and that systemic causes of dis-ease and systemic causes of mental illness and other and ill health, right, can be eradicated. And I think the basis of that is the minimum basic income, because that just releases all kinds of powerful energy. And I think then we would see a lot of folks creating their own businesses, so that, because it's not that nobody earns any money. I'm not anti money or anti profit, but I really think that minimum basic income would free folks.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would see lots of businesses starting, because I believe there are a lot of folks who are limited by the fact that they don't have this huge funding and can't do the things they want to do, so that we don't see the world we want to see. People are stuck working 3-4 minimum wage jobs and barely surviving. And these are folks whose creativity unleashed could do amazing things if we all had that minimum basic income. So that would be my magic wand.
Wonderful. And as we're talking about this, how did you fund your business?
I made do. When I started, I worked part-time at a salary job and part-time in my private practice. And I made sure that my living expenses were initially very low. So my family household needs to get by is 30,000 Canadian dollars a year. Mm-hmm. So our what I need to have my basic, very, very basic food and shelter needs met is only $30,000. And my beloved is also self-employed. So, but I bring in more revenue than he does, or more income to the family than he does. So the fact of keeping it low means that even if he doesn't earn a penny, my business will bring enough to keep us covered. And that was kind of where I started. I didn't have credit at the time. I didn't have savings. Like I said, 2 failed marriages, no savings, no pension, all that kind of stuff. I was in a very precarious position, and I really did take a big leap. And what really the insurance, if you will, was that part-time job that gave me what I needed to cover the bills so that I could take the risk on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So could you tell us, again, your area of expertise and what people can reach out to you about?
Yes. So I'm the entrepreneur's therapist, and I work mostly with women entrepreneurs. And I want to be clear about the definition of women. If you call yourself a woman, you're a woman by me. And I support you in riding the emotional roller coaster of running a business. so that you can care for your mental and emotional well-being and set the foundation for sustainable success in your business.
Beautiful. And where can people reach out to find you?
My website is shula.ca, shula.ca, or you can find me. I'm the Entrepreneur's Therapist on Instagram, and I love having chats with folks in the direct messages. That's so fun for me. That's the part I love most about social media, is not so much the propaganda we all are putting out there, but the opportunity for personal connection. So if you want to chat me up on Instagram, I'm happy to hear from you.
That's beautiful. And we'll have those contacts in the show notes. Thank you so much, Shulamit.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks so much for this opportunity.